All right. And we are live. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Bards and Books. I'm Usman, and I am joined today for my first ever live interview with an author. I'm very excited because I am joined by an author whose work I absolutely love and is currently one of my favorites of all time. So, that author is Karl Forshaw. How are you doing today, Karl?
Great, thank you, mate, and thank you for the compliment. It's not every day someone says something like that, so thank you very much, and I really appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, we've been talking for a while, and I'm glad we got the opportunity to do this. So, just a few quick announcements before we start. So, as you can see in the video there, we do have a giveaway for a paperback copy of Renia. So, if you want to be entered, all you have to do is comment on the video below, and there is a link in the description for you to leave your email, just so we have a way of contacting the winner. So that's there if you want to win a paperback copy of Renia, as well as, for those who don't know, there is a buddy read happening for this book in March 15th, and that will be on the Page Turners Discord. So if you want to join for that, everybody's invited to that. And one last thing I want to share, I have shared Karl's website in the description below. If you go to his website and put in the code is BARDS, BARDS, you will have 60% off for a paperback copy of Renia as well. So, those announcements out of the way, let's start with the interview. Karl, I gotta say, regardless of what people may think about your book, you cannot deny it's one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen. One of the most beautiful books I have ever seen. I love the color scheme, the font, everything. So why don't you talk a bit about your cover artist and how this came about here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the illustrator was a friend of mine. His name is Oliver Tsugino. I found him on DeviantArt, I think, originally. Did I? No, I didn't. There's a whole story of how I met him. But we've been friends for a while now, and his work is just exceptional. And there's a character to it that really stood out to me. So there's no other choice for me really at the time. It was like, okay, can you do this? And he's like, yeah. So, did a bit of back and forth and got the illustration. And then I spoke to Mandy Lynn, who's another YouTuber. Her company Stonebridge Books, about doing the logo and the text. So there's actually like two people that worked on the cover. And I'm thrilled with how it came out. It's beautiful. Even the paperback version came out really nicely. And I don't know if you can see, but there's sort of like there's something in the spine that's relevant to the book that I don't want to spoil anything.
Yes.
And then the back illustration's quite pretty as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really do love the cover. I'm kind of hoping that the next one comes out as well as this one.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for that. Let's see what we got here. Bert, hello, Bert. Good evening.
Hi, Bert.
Oh, your camera is crisp.
Ryan is such a nice guy. Always complimentary.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hello, Anitha. Good to see you. Beard of Darkness, Matt. How's it going? Very good. Very good to see you. What's up? See, Anitha agrees. A beautiful book, of course. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so why don't you take us through your publishing journey a bit, the ins and outs, or how that was?
Yeah, that's fine. I did things a little differently to how a lot of indie authors have gone about publishing. I did, instead of going through Ingram or KDP, I approached the CPI, which is a book printing company that do all the stuff for the broken binding and most of the Black Library stuff I've got on the shelf up here, and asked them if they deal with indies direct, and they were really open to it. And I ended up just sort of publishing it myself by ordering a bunch of books from them. And the nice thing about doing it that way is you get a lot of control over the quality of the end product.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to sift through paper samples and choose a paper that I like the look of. And then, I was in discussions with them about the hardback and how that needed to be a certain grade of paper because it has to last for 200 years. And so it was really nice because I got to see that side of things as well, and learn a lot more about how the books are put together and, what that process looks like. It was a privilege really to work with them. And, I'm sat on a lot of books. Well, I say that I've got rid of nearly all the hardbacks have gone. I think we've got 10 left here, and I think Broken Binding have got a few left if anyone's interested. But I've got plenty of paperbacks left. So I'm just going to see, whether I end up getting buried with them or not. I'm hoping not.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a slightly different way of doing things. It was, there's an upfront cost with that. But for me, I think it worked out because it's a lot easier to sell the books because they look really, really nice and like something you pick up on in Waterstones or a bookshop.
Yeah. I'm impressed with the quality. It's very nice. I like the paper, the covers, the material, everything. It's very well done, and I think that is a plus side to self-publishing. You're more in control of those elements, correct?
Yeah. Even with things like your cover. I went to see Adrian Tchaikovsky and RJ Barker speak. I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And somebody asked them, how much control do you have over your covers? And they said basically none. They get told, this is your cover and that's it. And it was really sort of shocking as an indie to listen to that and think, wow, I wouldn't like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's, sometimes we have to count our blessings as indies because the amount of control we get over the product as a whole is far greater.
Yeah, absolutely. Got Katie Forshaw. Hello, good to see you.
Yeah.
Did you guys plan to wear matching shirts? No, this is a pleasant surprise here. I noticed that too, actually, at the beginning. Very nice. Very nice. In case you didn't know, Carl's a pretty knowledgeable guy when it comes to cameras. He's given me tips before. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm a hobbyist. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Yeah. It's a Canon camera in case anyone wanted to know.
Hello,
hi,
Carl.
Caroline.
All right. So let's get to the first official question here. Your journey becoming a writer, give us a brief timeline of how that transpired. How did you get into writing? How did that unfold?
I think I probably toyed with the idea of writing a novel. I think the first time I thought about it was maybe 18, 19. I remember writing bits and bobs and then just thinking this is horrible and deleting them. I think the first time I thought I'm going to do this was 2021, maybe. Right, it was in the lockdown sort of period of time, and it was just something that was a bucket list thing that I thought, well, nobody's allowed out. I might as well do this now and see if it works. And I wrote the first draft of Renia in about 6 weeks, I think. Because I really went hard at it, and I think I managed to get like 65,000 words out. So it was much shorter, the first draft. And a lot of the part of the book where Renia is a child, I wrote a lot of that in one sitting, more or less. And that came out really good. So I was thinking, okay, I might have got something here. But then at that point, the rest of the book was very rough, very dark. And, I thought I need someone else to look at this. So I sent it to two editors, one in Australia, and then the editor that I work with now, John, just for a manuscript critique, and said, can you tell me what you think? Is this worth working on or not? And both of them came back and said it's worth working on, but very dark, needs a bit of light injecting. There were issues with pacing, and there were issues with the way I'd written it. So then I spent another year after that, I think, going through all these problems and trying to fix them, and working more on crafting the story into a good book. And that was much harder work than the first draft. And then sent it back to the editor, to John, and said, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's great. It's double the length though." And I'm like, "Well, I know." But luckily he turned around and said, "I think this is worth pursuing. I think you should, have another run through and fix these few outstanding issues and go from there." So I think from that point of writing the first draft in 2021 to release in 2023, it was under 2 years, but it was coming up to that point.
Yeah.
And then it's just sort of been the year since then has been mostly trying to market it and get it in people's faces, and thanks to people like yourself who picked it up and said this is good. It seems to, after a year now, be starting to gain some momentum, which is lovely, because it's meant that it's given me the incentive to work on the second book.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. I think it's beyond good. It's great. And it's, like I said, it's one of my favorites, been one of my favorites for the last year. And that kind of brings me to, I guess, my next question, which is that, well, there are a lot of different elements to talk about. But firstly, this book is very unique in that it blends many subgenres, which is just something I noticed. So it is a very dark fantasy, but it has very strong mystery elements. It's even got some horror thrown in the mix that I noticed. So what inspired, well, did something inspire that, or how was the process for that, blending all those elements together? What inspired that?
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if like the first book you write is just like a soup of all the things you want to do. And because you're sort of excited and it's your first book, and maybe it's just like you're a puppy, everything sounds great, I'll throw that in, I'll throw that in, I'll throw that in. And that's why it ended up that way. I've always liked stories that have a mystery element to them. I like things to figure out, and I think with Renia and the series as a whole, I wanted to have a lot of stuff in there that wasn't easy to figure out, that you got some sort of sense of reward for figuring it out. So I think the mystery came from that. And I think there will be some element of mystery throughout the entire series. The horror and the dark fantasy stuff, I think the first real taste I had of that was probably China Mieville, and reading Perdido Street Station for the first time. It was sort of just blew my mind open to what fantasy could be. And I don't feel like I had anything quite like that since. So I think I wanted to, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I shouldn't even be mentioned in the same sentence as China Mieville. His stuff is mind-blowingly good. But I wanted to do something that was a bit dark and a bit weird. And so that's how it came out. But as far as genre blending goes, it's fantasy is lots of things to lots of different people.
Yep.
And to me, it's just something that's like the wildest thing you can possibly imagine. And that's sort of where I wanted to go with it.
Yeah. Well, China Mieville's on my list. I got Perdido Street Station. Haven't read any of his work yet, but it's on. I got it ready to go. And I've heard it is very unique and, not quite like anything else. But I wouldn't sell yourself short. I would put you up there, because here's the deal. I am likening this. I mean, I'm also reading it at the same time, during the same time. But I would liken this to Malazan in the way that it's kind of structured, and in the way that there is like things that the reader needs to piece together, lots of deeper themes and subtleties there. So like I said, I think you're doing great work, and this definitely deserves more attention.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like books that don't give you everything straight. You know, I don't want to be given everything. I want my brain to be working on it.
Yeah.
Like subconsciously, I want to be stood in the shower and then go, okay. And that happens a lot when I'm writing. So those moments, those are aha moments, they give me the most pleasure when I'm drafting stuff. So if I can share those with the reader in some way, I'll always try and do it. And I don't know if Renia has many of those aha moments. I guess there's one or two really big ones, but I definitely was trying to do that.
Yeah. Well, for me, the aha moments were on the reread. I caught so much stuff on the reread that I didn't catch the first time around, and it made it so much better. Like my rating was the same, 5 stars. I would have given it more if I could, but it was cool to have those kind of epiphanies. But here's a question: do you read while you write, or do you pause?
Always reading. It's odd as well, because I'll read different authors depending on what I'm writing. So if I'm doing an action sequence, I'll probably be reading Dan Abnett, or one of the Black Library Warhammer 40k Horus Heresy novels, just because their action scenes have to be incredible. And if I'm doing something particularly prosy, I'll be reading China Mieville or Adrian Tchaikovsky or something like that. And I find that it's like listening to certain genres of music to get you in the right mood to get the rhythm right,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hello, good to see you. 2 legends. Well, thank you, Joe. That means a lot.
I've been talking to Joe a lot this month. We've both been drafting pretty hard this month, so we've both been in the trenches together. Joe finished a little bit before me.
Well, he likes your background. It is a nice background.
Yeah. It's a mess back there. It's just hiding the mess.
Okay. That kind of brings me to the next point that I wanted to bring. So we'll go through 2 things. First of all, what are some of your favorite authors and your favorite books or series, or some of your inspirations? You can go through that.
Yeah, right. I've actually got a pile of books conveniently just sat here. I guess the obvious, first and biggest influence has been Ian Banks. This is just a fantastic book. Use of Weapons, and the entire series, his sci-fi stuff, is just so great. And I don't think many people are reading this this series at the minute. So
is that part of the Phlebas series, or
consider Phlebas as the first book?
The first book. Okay, that is the same series, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's a very good book as well. But I think Use of Weapons, the third one, really was when he really nailed it, and I was like, okay, this is really good. And then everything since then is just got better and better. I think Accession is probably my favorite. Yeah, it's just fantastic. Sorely missed. And then these 2, and these are only thin books. These are so good.
China Mieville, yeah.
Yeah, these later 2 books are nothing really like his earlier work, and you can see that because this is a novella essentially, and then Perdido Street Station is that's a big old book.
Thick. Yeah.
And they're very different, but wow, these are amazing. And then obviously I don't know if anyone hasn't read this yet, but this is stunning.
Oh yeah,
this is so good.
Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, everything. The Children of Time series has turned out amazing. This series, The Tyrant Philosophers, it's been a massive inspiration for the next book in the Luna Ruinam series.
Ah, okay. Well, he's one of those authors, Adrian Tchaikovsky, that is on my list, but I want to read like pretty much everything by him. So,
yeah, I'm waiting to get into the Shadows of the Apts series, because the Broken Binding are doing the special editions, and I think I've got 3 of them. The 4th one's coming out soon, so when I've got the 4th one, I think I'll start reading those. Yeah, it's fantastic. All 3 of those authors are so good. And then like indie authors, I read a lot of JCM Byrne.
yeah,
I've read nearly everything he's written. So hi, Joe. I've just finished Crystal Matar's 2nd book, Brick and Bone. That's exceptional. I'm reading this month. I'm doing 2 buddy reads with the Page Turners Discord. I think Ryan's book's on there, and what's the other one called? The Daughter of the Beast. So those will be the 2 that I'm reading next month, and I'm currently reading Joe Byrne's next Hybrid Helix novel, which is fantastic.
Oh,
I've not told him that yet, but it's fantastic.
Nice. I'm excited for that one. So when are we going for 18 holes now?
That's my neighbor.
Ah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and now I finished the book, I can go golfing again.
Nice. The difference in book size, yep. Absolutely. Also love Matar. Her books. E.C. Greaves. There you go.
I'm only at 55%, Joe, so you've still got time, but I'm really hooked.
Oh, there you go. Be happy to join the tea time.
More golfers. See, there's something like parallels between golf and writing, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a golfer myself, but well.
Neither am I, mate.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So we got through the books. Now we have to go through the music, because when I first started talking to you, we were both into metal. This is amazing. I love talking to fellow metalheads. So give us some of your inspirations, your favorite bands, artists, if it's an inspiration for your writing in any way or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm a big musical writer, so I'm always like I said, there's like certain genres to get me in the mood for certain scenes. So instrumental progressive metal has been mostly where Luna Ruinam's been. With the first book, definitely, I was listening to a lot of, there's an Australian guitar player called Pliny. I think Electric Sunrise is it might be the album. It might be the single, but I listened to that. And then there was Mestis and David Maxim Mikic. I'm probably butchering these names, but I have a whole playlist that's just stuff I listened to while I was writing Renia. I'm really, really into metal, always have been. So I used to play guitar, and I was a singer for a while as well.
Oh.
So yeah, music's been a huge part of my life. But I listen to everything. It's not just metal. I listen to pretty much everything.
Okay.
Yeah. But, if you want to go back, Pantera was probably the first big metal band I got into. Maybe my dad got me into Maiden and Thin Lizzy quite early.
Okay.
But yeah, when I started getting into it, it was Pantera, and then I liked Black Label Society for a while, and then I started getting into slightly more obscure stuff. There's a singer called Jorn, Jorn. He's probably one of my favorite metal singers. His voice is so good. I made a character after him in the second book.
Interesting.
Yeah, so good. And there's a new singer called Dino Jalusic that you should check out.
Yes, we discussed him. Yeah, his vocals are very good. I'm surprised.
Yeah, he's really, roars like a lion. But yeah, it's funny. Like I was speaking to RJ Barker was giving me a bunch of death metal bands to listen to when I
RJ Barker.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think the metal thing is definitely part of the fantasy DNA.
Yeah, seems to go hand in hand. That's what I always say. At least, I mean, for me, all my favorite bands are like, they sound like, it sounds like fantasy music. If you could relate that into metal, it would, you know. And my favorite band is Winter Sun. I don't know if you've heard of Winter Sun.
Yeah, I actually checked them out on your recommendation. I think you were speaking about it on another another video, and I checked them out after. Definitely made their way onto my writing playlists.
Yeah, they're so good.
I'm really into that, especially the progressive stuff, Dream Theater, Symphony X, those sort of bands that just...
Yes.
There's a band called Epica as well that I really like.
Epica, yes. Yeah, when I played in a band, I played drums, so we did a lot of symphonic metal. Like we had a symphonic metal album, and Epica, big inspiration, Nightwish, you know, a lot of those big bands.
You're going to have to send me your album now so I can have a listen.
You got it. I will. All right. Wasting lots of time just to end up
golf.
Golf.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Oh man. I love the humor that Joe incorporates into his books, man. It's so funny.
It's not just his books, his tweets.
That's where, exactly. It's him.
Yeah.
When you write, do you listen to metal? Is there an album you recommend listening to while reading your books?
Actually, this is everybody's going to do this now because, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I had this idea that in the next book, I'm going to put like a bunch of QR codes on the back page where you can just get the playlists that I was listening to when I wrote them. I don't know if anyone would actually find that useful, but yeah, it's... there's a bunch of stuff like I'll be listening to an old Final Fantasy soundtrack or something for a battle scene, or for the new book I was listening to the Ghost in the Shell soundtrack on heavy rotation because it's like sort of really odd. Is it Balinese or something? It's a strange sort of choir that's. It's hard to explain, but yeah, I've got tons of playlists and stuff, so I might make them public on my website at some point and see if anybody cares.
You know what? People into music and musicians like myself would greatly appreciate that. I'd love to check out more music. I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that for sure. Like y'all would like Angel Vivaldi.
Let me write that down.
Yeah, me too. Angel Vivaldi. I'll check that out and let you know, Ryan.
Yes, I have a very loud keyboard. Sorry.
Yeah. The QR code idea would certainly get around copyright infringement threats. Well, there you go. Yeah. Okay, let's get to the next question. I can't believe we're nearly half an hour.
Yeah, just talking about music and golf.
Yeah, you talk about music forever. Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, so going back to what I said about the story and how it requires the reader, more so than your typical fantasy, requires the reader to focus and kind of piece things together, you know, a little more brain power, I would say. So what was the process like for that, writing Renia, and did it make things any more difficult in that regard, trying to piece those like subtle hints here and there, you know?
It was difficult, yeah. But I don't know whether being a computer programmer helps with that, because my brain's sort of wired up to think more abstractly. That might be a load of rubbish, but definitely my brain is sort of set up to solve problems in an abstract way. And I think with Renia, what helped was I already had a lot of the world before I had Renia's story. So I already dreamed up most of the world, the politics, you know, the significant events during the timeline that I was writing in. So I could write Renia's story and have a general idea of where it fit with the rest of the events that the reader knows nothing about. And what that allowed me to do was sprinkle in bits and bobs in places where we were in a dream sequence, or the big final boss guy was speaking to one of his underlings, or just places where you don't really expect to know everything, to understand everything that's being said. I was able to sprinkle a lot in there to leave for people who want to go back and reread to look at and say, oh, what does this mean? Like, why did he say that? I don't think it's going to be. It was fine with book 1. It's getting harder with book 2, and I think probably by book 9, I'll need someone to help me do it.
Yeah.
But for the meantime, it's okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
But yeah, I mean, I could imagine that getting harder and harder as things progress. But it's one of those series. Like, I can't help but keep relating this to Malazan, because it's one of those series that you benefit so much from rereading. And same with this book. Like, when I don't know if I mentioned this already, but when I reread it, there were so many things I picked up on that I hadn't the first time around, and it was very refreshing. It's like reading almost like the book for the first time again, almost. But yeah, so that is greatly appreciated, and I could imagine that could be a lot of work.
It's worth it though. If because I did sort of write it with the intention that you would get something out of a reread.
Yeah.
So when somebody says to you, I reread it and I found all this extra stuff, it gives you a bit of a lift, because it means that all that effort you put into sprinkling those crumbs in there paid off for someone and got someone's mind working. So I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, no, you succeeded in that regard for sure. There will be 9 books.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Yeah. I think I can do it in 9. I've got a sort of a broad outline of the series as a whole, and I think it's going to be 3 trilogies. Provided nothing happens to me, or nothing bad happens. I think I can do 9. That's the hope anyway. I might get to the 3rd one and just think, I haven't really got anything extra to add, but I've definitely got an idea of where I'd like to go with 9. I don't think if I did any more than that, there'd probably be short stories and novellas.
Okay. Epic Tales is here. What's up, man? Good to see you. All right, so let me go to this question now. So that being said, it being a difficult sort of journey, having to write in the style that you write, are there any things that you learned from this writing process that kind of surprised you, aside from the publishing aspect, like just writing the book? Anything?
So everything's been a surprise, because it was my first book. So I think the biggest surprises were just how much work is involved in setting up the book as a product. So not the writing, not the editing, even though the editing really surprised me, because by the time I'd got to the end of the editing process, I never wanted to read Renia again. I think I'd probably been through it 20, 30 times, and I was getting to the point where it was like, I can't find another spelling mistake in this, and then someone would find one. So that was a surprise, but I enjoyed every part of it, and I have enjoyed every part of it, and I'm still enjoying it. So even when there are surprises, like I expected to sell a lot more paperbacks than hardbacks, that has not been the case. The hardbacks have gone. I've still got loads of paperbacks. That was a massive surprise. But it's a great learning experience. And I think the biggest surprise actually was just how much I would come to value the community.
Yes.
Because you develop bonds with other authors. And those have been really quite special. Like Joe's in the chat right now. He's been a mentor and a friend to me since the beginning. Rex Burke is another one. He's quite local to me. We speak all the time, and our beta read his work, and he's a great guy. There's loads of people that I speak to on Discord, yourself, Bo. Everybody is really welcoming, really understanding, really supportive. It's a great place to work.
Absolutely. No, those connections, like getting to know people is very rewarding, and it's everything. So 17 is a great number, only 8 more than 9. That's true. Only 8 more than 9.
I wouldn't be surprised if we got that many hybrid Helix novels. I think we get 50 novels, Joe.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of those. Okay, I think we might dive into some very, very mild spoilers now. If
I'm happy to do that, yeah.
We'll get to it. Look at that, 25 maybe. All right. Cool. Okay, so before we do dive in, I will once again let everyone know, as you can see in the video, if you want a chance to win a paperback copy of Renia, just comment on the video below, check the description. There's a link where you can leave your email so we can contact the winner. So just do those 2 things. You can win a paperback. Again, there is a buddy read happening for this book in the Page Turners Discord, which I will also have linked below. So if you want to join that, you can join. It starts on March 15th. If you want to discuss the book with other people as you're reading along. And lastly, Karl Forshaw's website is linked in the description as well. You can go there. There's a code, BARDS, BARDS. You type that in, you'll get 60% off of Renia. So, and that is until April 1st, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Right. All right. All right, that said, let's move on to some mild spoilers. Let me just put this up here. There we go. It's official. All right. So let's get to the world building, because this is such a unique world. I mean, the concept of the moon kind of colliding with the world, giving rise to this magic system, which includes light stones and moonstones. Very interesting stuff. I mean, this is one aspect that draws me greatly into my read, is if it's got super cool world building, magic, that kind of stuff. So you definitely succeeded there, but what inspired this concept and this kind of world and all this?
Yeah, do you want the short answer or the long one?
It's up to you. Go for it.
So there's multiple sources of inspiration that I didn't realize until I was slapped in the face with them. But believe it or not, I grew up in the early 90s, and I spent most of my teenage years playing games like Zelda and Final Fantasy. And a lot of these concepts were probably burned into my brain by those games. I think it's a good time to mention that the whole world of Luna Ruinam started off as a video game concept. Oh. So I've been a computer programmer for 20 odd years, and one of the things that always scared me was writing a game engine, because there's a lot of math involved, and it always put me off doing it. And then I decided, I can try, So I thought, well, I'll try and do something that's a bit like the old Final Fantasy games, where you've got that 2D background and 3D things on top of it. And I started playing Final Fantasy IX again, which is just this beautiful, really rich game. And then, I'm building this engine. I'm thinking, well, I need a story. And I had a whole team. I had, artists. Oliver, the guy who did the cover, was the 2D artist working on the game. I had a 3D artist called Ben, brilliant 3D artist, and then I had a character designer as well. And we were all beavering away on this game. And then, I was like, well, we need a story. And I was like, oh, I'll write something. So I started doing backstory for different characters, and Renia was one of the characters. So I thought, what's her past? So I just started writing. 3,000 words turned into 10,000, turned into 60,000, and that's how we got to that point. So the inspiration for the world came from the fact that it was supposed to be a love letter to the old Final Fantasy games.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah. And the magic system was designed with the game in mind, so that it was sort of fully fleshed out in my head because I knew how to program it.
Interesting.
So when it came to writing it, it was just like, okay, this is how it works.
That is interesting. And I think, I wouldn't even know, because I'm like, my brother's into computer programming, that kind of stuff. I haven't really picked his brain on the matter because he's a big reader too, actually, surprisingly. So, but I think that's an interesting correlation you mentioned, and even earlier in terms of your writing and structuring and stuff. So that's really cool. And
I hope it wasn't a long-winded, boring answer.
No. No, I'm sure a lot of gamers could appreciate that. I mean, I know I'm not a gamer myself, but I know Final Fantasy is widely popular. So very interesting there. Absolutely. Going back to the structure, I might be coming back to something you discussed already, but going back to the structure, there are multiple POVs in this story, and it's kind of structured in a way where sometimes we do get like snippets. We get POVs and then we jump back and forth between characters within a chapter. That must have been difficult. Was it difficult structuring that, or is it like you kind of is it kind of like in steps? I don't know.
It sounds a lot harder than it is.
Okay.
I think when I'm thinking about a scene, I know who's in that scene, and then I'm like thinking, well, if this was a movie or a TV show, how would I shoot this scene? And then I'm thinking, well, who's got the best point of view for what I'm trying to get across? So if there's multiple characters in that scene, I'll be like, well, Renia's point of view is actually the best one here because I can show like the dynamic between Bandak and Jeff better. So then I'll write it from her perspective. And then if I get to the next part of this, it might just be the next part of the scene. And if it doesn't, if I want to say, well, I want to be in Jeff's head for this, but I'll just switch over. And I know a lot of readers find that annoying. But it's just the way I did it. And I quite like the way it turned out. And I like the fact that it does jump from, sometimes mid-chapter multiple times from character to character, because it gives you more of a, well, it's just how I wanted the story to feel. I wanted it to feel a bit like a mosaic, that you could sort of see like this kaleidoscope thing that eventually comes together.
Yeah. And I think you did it in a great way. Like, the pacing was very well, and the jumps aren't jarring at all. So I think it was a success in that regard, at least.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
There were a few times where I thought I'm going too far with this. There's a dream scene where I think there's the coma scene. Mild spoiler, there's a coma scene. My editor was like, you've got to cut this out. You've got to, or just get it down to a single paragraph. And I'm like, I can't. There's so much stuff in here that's foreshadowing and important for the rest of the series. And I managed to, I cut a lot of it out, but I managed to keep a lot of it as well. So I was happy about that. And in terms of the pacing, I know that I have issues with the pacing in certain parts of the book. And I think because it was my first book as well, I didn't really know that much about how things should be structured. So the whole sort of back and forth that happens in the first act of the book. So you've got the present time, and then you've got like 18 years ago when the protagonist was a child, and I'm sort of interlacing up to like chapter 10 or 11, and then that stops. And I know that some people were like, "Oh, what's happening?" And even my editor was like, "Do you think we should take those past chapters and make those Act 1, and then make everything else Act 2?" And it could have worked, but it would have been a very different book because it wouldn't have given me the space then to explore characters like Peter or Pistorius in you know, to the extent that I wanted to. And also by making the structure a bit strange, it allowed me to show exactly why Renia was triggered by certain things, because you could see, oh, this is why, because the memory is the next chapter or the previous chapter.
Right.
So it was a bit experimental, and I don't know whether I've gone even further with that in the next book or I've toned it down. I can't tell, which is not a good sign.
All right. Well, we'll see. But that is interesting. And just a couple more things I want to touch on. So we'll get to a character that I had the most conflicting emotions with, and that was Pistorius. I mean, his circumstances, like, he comes off at the beginning of this as this very vindictive guy who's sowing the seeds of a revolution, and like it just seems like he's trying to cause a lot of conflict. But then we get a deeper look at his past and the tragedy that's befallen him, and we get reasons. We learn like why he makes the choices he makes, and at the end, it was hard for me to actually fault him for his actions. So it was very conflicting for me. Like, was that a goal for you to have those kind of conflicting emotions with the reader?
Yeah, I think Pistorius' story is it's quite. I think the thing that maybe I should add on to what you've just said is that there's a futility to it as well. And it's almost pitiable that, you know, when you first see him and you first getting into his head and the way he thinks at that point in the story, spoilers everyone, you know, he does seem like a threat, a genuine threat. But the further you get into it, the more you realize it's his state of mind that is the threat to him. And he's only a threat to himself, really. And that, you know, there's a sadness in that. And also what I was able to explore with the relationship with him and his brother, and him and his father, that was really quite cathartic to write. It actually ended up being one of my favorite things about the book. And I don't know if you believe this, but in the first draft, he hardly had any story at all. So it's all thanks to my editor, really, that he gave me the kick up the arse to give Pistorius a story worthy of being included as a point of view character. And I'm really glad I did, because it forced me to think about his family, and, you know, what that dynamic looks like, because his father is. Now, I think, you know, if you read it, you get this sense that the Glorian is a bit of a bad dude, you know, and I hope I've given him this air of, okay, I hope we're going to explore that a little bit more, because in the second book, I go into a lot more detail about Pistorius' family.
Okay. Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
I hope it works. I do.
Yeah.
I just finished drafting it today, so it's sort of a bit like soup in my head at the minute.
Hello, Derek.
Hi, Derek.
So touching on that, the last thing that that I kind of want to just pick your brain a little bit is this theme of tragedy. You know, like obviously it's a dark fantasy. A lot of dark things happen, but I think most, if not all, the characters go through some pretty tragic stuff and have a pretty tragic history. So what inspired that? Like, was it a part of your theme to just make it, you know, hit harder, resonate with people, or was it very cathartic, like you said?
I think it's never really my intention to try and force an emotion out of someone. I'd much rather write characters that are. I think the thing is, a lot of people say like Renia is not a lovable character. There's nothing redeeming about her, you know. And a lot of people have said that. Even people that I've paid for reviews have said, you know, I don't like Renia. And I always think to myself, oh, I don't. and that's not the point. I don't want to like Renia. There's the theme I think that I'm exploring is that everybody's complex to a degree, and everybody has part of their personality that is not great. You know, everybody has flaws. I think what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the most interesting people that I've met in my life haven't been easy to love or like. So that's sort of what I'm trying to explore. And I think the tragedy and the darkness of the series as a whole is probably reflective of the state of mind I was in when I wrote because it's been a tough few years for everybody. Yeah. And that 2021 period was really difficult mentally for everyone. And I think that's definitely reflected in the work. And I think that continues to this day. I think people are still struggling mentally, and that's I'd like there to be a degree of honesty in what I'm writing, and I'm writing what's going on. So it's tricky because I don't want to be too dark and depressive. And the first draft of Renia was, and I was told, you need to add some light to this because it's awful, and it was really bad. Some of the stuff that I did to Renia is terrible, but I did way worse in the first draft. And I've got another novel that I'm working on at the minute, which is not a Luna Ruinam novel, which explores themes of mental health in men, and the problem that we're having with suicide at the minute for young men. I do think these things are important, and I think it's worth exploring them in books. So that's what I'll do, and as long as I've got things that I find interesting to write, I'll carry on writing them. But I am aware that it's pretty dark, and I have to warn people a lot. Don't expect this book to make you feel warm and fuzzy, because there are moments, but it's not going to do that. Yeah.
So you're working on book 2 at the moment.
Yeah. So that I finished drafting that today, and we're clocked in at about 110,000 words, which is, for a first draft for me, is quite big. So I don't know whether it might end up being around 150 or 160. But it all depends on what my editor thinks of it. If he turns around and says you need to rethink this whole thing because it's disgusting, I'll probably have to rewrite the whole thing. But I was happy with it. I had some moments in the end of the book where I was really, really excited. So hopefully I'll reread it in a couple of weeks and like what I see. The plan is to start drafting out this other book, because it's easy to get stuck in editing mode and come out of drafting mode, and I want to stay in drafting mode just long enough to try and get 60,000 or so words out on this other book. So
you're just starting to draft the other one. Okay.
Yeah. I've got 1 or 2 chapters, and they're just sort of exploratory to see how I want the general feel to be. I've got a lot of the story in my head, but it's sort of making it all work that's the difficult part. And knowing how long it's going to be, I don't know if I'm going to aim for like 40 or 50,000 words, or it might end up being a full length thing, but we'll see. It would be nice to have something a bit different out there as well, because I think series can be, in particular fantasy, can be a bit daunting for people.
Yeah, no, that is a good idea, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to book 2 especially. I cannot wait. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I will say there's a lot more Bandak.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a very Reaper focused book at the minute.
Hey, I'm all for it. I can't wait. That sounds awesome. How did you know where the line was when balancing the darker elements? Was it mostly just about trusting the feedback you got and adjusting to that?
In the original, yeah. So the first thing I did with the manuscript was get a critique from professional editor, and I spoke to 2 editors about it. One male, one female, and they both said it's really dark, so you need to make sure there's some light at the end of the tunnel for some of the characters. Obviously, can't do that with the ones that die. Well, they see a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's the one you don't want to walk into. I think you have to. I think it comes out the more you work on a book, the more if you start to feel like there's no hope, and if it starts getting to you really badly, that's how I knew like this is just too much. And I think I always had this little source, like this little thing in my head that was like, don't do that. That's too, you're going too far. So even some of the really gritty stuff, I tried to write it in a way that was tasteful. Yeah. Just because I didn't want to be, I didn't want the writing to seem obscene. And I think there's a place for that, and there definitely is some of that in the next one. But with Renia's story, because it takes place, because of the setting and the characters and the way the characters speak and think, I didn't want to be too crude. So I had like a warning alarm in my head that, these characters wouldn't speak about this way, or they wouldn't be explicit about it. That's a very long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's a. I understood it. I understood your point, though. So that's all I have. Is there anything that you wanted to discuss, or?
Apart from saying thank you for being a champion of this book, I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And it definitely makes a difference. Every time you've been on YouTube and said something good about my book, I've watched my KDP numbers spike. So thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, the website is karlforshaw.co.uk. The paperbacks are still for sale there. If you do want to get a hardback, I think there's a few left at the Broken Binding. So, grab them. Yeah. Like I said, we've got the coupon, so anyone who watches this can get 60% off the paperback. The coupon bards. I'm on Blue Sky now. I'm on Twitter, which is now X. I'm on Discord. So, if you read the book and you enjoy it, give me a shout. It's always nice to hear from people. Yeah, I'm around.
Perfect. No, that's good. And like I've said before, let me bring this up one more time. Paperback giveaway for Renia. Just comment below and check the description. There's a link there for your email to contact the winner. Everything is in the description. We got the buddy read for Renia happening on the Page Turners Discord as well, which begins on March 15th. So if you want to join that, and of course, Karl's website, where you can get 60% off of Renia with the code BARDS. Karl, thank you so much for coming on and discussing your book with us. This was great.
It's been my pleasure, mate. Thank you.
You just want to... Joe. Joe.
Thanks awesome. For that, Joe. Yeah. I do, though, seriously. Yeah.
Well, this has been a blast. Thank you again, Karl. Thank you, everybody in the chat who was here. Thank you for commenting. And if you're catching this on the replay, thank you again as well. This was a blast, and we'll definitely do this again at some point. Maybe book 2 is out.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'd love to, mate. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll say goodbye there. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.